I wish Draymond would do a little less of this. And if you're watching on the video side, I'm saying to shut his yap and stop talking and let the game play out before you go on TNT and say, oh, on my 1 of 10 scale, I'd call it a 0. Welcome to episode 267 of Empty the Bench here on the Empty the Bench podcast network presented by Playback. He's Anthony Balester. I'm Nick Morgasen. Follow us on social media at ETB Sports, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Make sure you follow the Empty the Bench podcast network at ETB Network, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at ETB Network. Follow our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ETB Network. As we get closer and closer, 915 subscribers to 1,000 subscribers. So please hit the subscribe button down below. And if you can't watch on the video site, listen to Empty the Bench wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube Premium as well. So go listen if you can't watch on the video side. Please check us out on our expanded platform Substack, etbnetwork.substack.com. We can catch a lot of us on the network doing some extra content, including us. We're doing Alley-Oop Analytics, our NBA exclusive Substack video series, which comes out every Thursday. And when I tell you there is a good one this week, I will not give it away. It is a good one. I promise you. Anthony actually came up with it, and I totally forgot about it, but it's good. So just make sure you catch that. etbnetwork.substack.com. We have a bunch of other things. Baseball Bonanza's on there. We have Grant Winsauer doing NFL writing on there. We have Will Charlton doing Noteworthy in the NCAA. There's a lot of things. Unnecessary Wagers by Nick D. There's a lot. Just go check it out. If you go on there to our platform, etbnetwork.substack.com, it's $5 a month to unlock all this extra content. So please go do that as well. And finally, Empty the Bench and the Empty the Bench podcast network presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience, from playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. We've been doing a bunch. We just came off NBA All-Star Weekend. A bunch of us watched the NBA All-Star Game and the new format, which we will get into. Some likes, some dislikes on the new format for the NBA All-Star festivities. Can't really call it a game anymore because it's not one game. But we'll get into that in a little bit. But right off the top, Anthony, how you doing?
Real good. And it was definitely an entertaining weekend, that one that we just passed. We had a great All-Star weekend. I may not have agreed with the format, but we'll go in further detail on that. It was a great weekend in UFC. We had some breaking NFL news as well, and I can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, so just to tell you, this is going to be a busy show. And I've told Anthony before, the topics on this show change, and it happened again over the last couple of days. A lot of the big stuff, we'll get into the All-Star weekend. We'll get into Draymond Green's comments, because again, you knew he was going to have a big mouth and all that. So don't you worry. We'll get to the NBA All-Star weekend. Justin Tucker in the news again. This time we have more issues going on with Justin Tucker, allegedly. Let me be very clear about that, number one, because we don't know. Also, a certain NFL bullying scandal is back after 10 years. Yeah, just when we explain, you'll understand why. Matthew Stafford trade rumors, that's more NFL offseason stuff. But That could be a big story depending on if he ends up somewhere else. YouTube TV in the news with Paramount. It looked like a lot of college basketball fans could wipe the sweat off their brow a little bit. We'll also talk about USA versus Canada, obviously in the Four Nations, the NHL tournament. And this was in place of the All-Star weekend for them, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So we'll get into that. Some college basketball. The new top 25 is out. Some UFC. We'll get into all that. And if we have some time, maybe some baseball at the end. But here we go. This is the big kahuna in the room from this past weekend. The 2025 NBA All-Star Weekend is in the books. There was a lot of, I don't know what you want to call it, Anthony, negative reactions to it. What would you say?
Yeah, I definitely think, I kind of echoed a lot of what Draymond Green said. I'm just going to get right into it. I agree. I don't like the format at all. And at the end of the day, as great as those players were from the Rising Stars game, as great as Stephon Castle was, and they did put up a good game against, the old veterans. And I think there was a lot of pride that went into that. But at the end of the day, like Draymond Green said, these guys earned and worked hard and bled and sweat and put in years of work to make this all-star game. How many years have they missed this opportunity to not make the all-star game? And you get guys like Kate Cunningham who finally make an all-star. And then now all of a sudden you got guys in the Rising Stars who now get to share the same floor as them on the same night. I think there's a reason why the Rising Stars are supposed to have their own night and the actual all-stars are supposed to have their own night. So I definitely disagreed with that. I don't think they should have had them playing. And I definitely agree that they should have a full game because it does hurt records. People want to say, hey, I scored more points than Kobe Bryant did in All-Star. Well, with this format, since there's a max and you play up to a certain number amount, you never get that, those scoring titles. So I agree with everything Draymond said. What about you, Nick?
So I like the format change of the games because I think the issue with the original East versus West, the conferences playing one another, is what would happen? You get 300 total points scored in an all-star game. There's no defense being played. It's either shooting threes or alley-oop dunks. Like, I get it. It's an all-star game, but it's not a game. It was more like an all-star fan fest going on between the East and the West. No one's playing defense. No, because no one wants to get hurt during the game. But they need to do a better job of timing if they're going to do this format. Now, there's some things I agree with Draymond on, and there are certain things that I think Draymond just opens his mouth because he knows he's going to get clicks and views, and everyone is going to comment on it, including what's the word I was looking where he would just say things for the heck of it for no reason. And it was just like, come on, dude. Can we focus on the guys playing in the game and not you? And when he said that on a scale of 1 to 10, this was because he was on the TNT broadcast, because go figure, he would be. And he said on a scale of 1 to 10, I give the whole NBA All-Star Weekend a 0. And I'm like, come on, dude. Don't make the weekend about you. You're not in the All-Star festivities except for the team competition, the skills competition. Which, by the way, if it wasn't for the Spurs getting disqualified during the skills competition, they wouldn't have even been in it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think, Draymond's comments, like I said, I agree with him. But I think when he said a 0, I think that was a little harsh. I don't think it was that bad. I mean, you could at least gave it a 5 or a 6 and then said what you disagree with. But to say a 0, I mean, you're basically saying it's an absolute joke. It's not even worth watching. And it's the worst all-star game in history by far. Now, I agree, Nick. I think the adjustments that they made definitely seem to allow more competitive basketball and allow for more defense. And that's what you want. But I think what they need to do is figure out a way to do that while also eliminating the Rising Stars. Now, I know it's tough when you have only about 12 guys from each conference going and you have 24 players. I think what they need to do is maybe do 14 from each conference, which gives you a total of 28 players, and then divide that up into 4 teams of 7. Now you have 4 teams of 7 players. They're all going to get a lot of minutes, and you have the same format of the 4 teams. They play each other. You have a semifinals and a finals. I think that's the way to do it. Keep this format kind of the same way, but don't have the rising stars in it against the actual all-stars.
No, that part I agree with you on. That the rising stars, because even though they were not voted in as all-stars, you're putting them in to play games against the other all-stars in this format. So, to be honest, they almost have to be considered all-stars the way you had the format during the weekend. So I was like, wait a minute. The all-stars, the rising stars never played against the actual all-stars. It's never happened. And I was so confused at first. Like, I understood the bracket thing because they needed 4 teams. Why didn't you just make 4 teams? Why didn't you just make 4 teams out of the East and West? You're telling me you couldn't get 28 players and break it up into 7 each and figure it out? I mean, the one thing I did like, by the way, was the no clock. I thought that was kind of interesting because it actually felt like it made the game go faster. Not having to watch a clock, not having to watch. I didn't like the whole, like, every 10 points was a timeout. I thought that was a little weird. That's almost like the TV timeout in college basketball or the NBA. And for most people who don't understand the TV timeout, that's for advertisers and commercials, so they make sure they get them in to games. You'll see that in the NFL too. They do that also. But I don't know. When the regular teams played, it made sense. When those teams played, the Rising Stars and Draymond, I agreed with on this. He said we will look silly if we lost to the Rising Stars team. Like, I don't know if I go as far as say it looks silly. It would look bad because they're technically not all stars. But I wish Draymond would do a little less of this. And if you're watching on the video side, I'm saying to shut his yap and stop talking and let the game play out before you go on TNT and say, oh, on my 1 of 10 scale, I'd call it a 0. Are you just trying to destroy the reputation of All-Star Weekend? Let me be really honest, though. The All-Star Weekend for the NBA has not been great in years. It just has not. They have not figured out how to fix it. It's been like a glorified clown show the last 5 or 6 years. No one wants to compete in the dunk contest. That's why Mac McClung has won the dunk contest the last 3 years, including winning it this year. Because no star wants to get hurt in the dunk contest. But I don't know if you picked up while he was doing all the dunks, or if you at least saw videos of the dunks that he was doing, Ja Morant, who has been very vocal, and it's gotten him in trouble from time to time, goes on Twitter during the dunk contest, I think, because he dunked over the Kia car. That was one of them. And then he did the hoverboard spinning. That was from the year Aaron Gordon won the dunk contest. And like he had one guy holding a basketball here and he dunked 2 basketballs. And it was cool. I thought the props were actually a cool thing because that was kind of missing from the dunk contest. But John Morant comes out and says, oh, well, what he's doing makes me want to go dunk in the contest next year. All right, Ja, put your money where your mouth is and go win the dunk contest next year. Don't tweet it out, which everyone called attention to. And then, I don't know if you saw the Giannis tweet afterwards. It says, if you'll do it, I'll do it. And he put the red 100 logo with the lines under it, meaning 100%. And of course, Giannis, in fashion, in his press conference after the game, said, my kid stole my phone and tweeted that out.
Yeah.
Do we really believe that?
And then I even saw Zach LaVine was getting into it because they called Zach LaVine and Aaron Gordon to come back in, and Zach LaVine, I think, responded. And to your point, Nick, I think Matt McClung, may have saved the dunk contest. I mean, before he arrived, it was an absolute joke. And I know the All-Star game in general, all the competitions, maybe except for the 3-point competition, has declined. But the dunk contest was an absolute joke, and it got to the point where you had 3 guys in it who just kept missing every dunk and didn't look like they wanted to be in it. Well, then all of a sudden you get a guy like Mac McClung in, and now he's doing dunks that like we haven't seen before, or if we have seen him before, he takes it up a notch and does something even better. And what makes it more impressive, Nick, is even like Stephon Castle, who had a couple of good dunks. How many times did he miss? A lot. When Mac McClung made all those dunks, How many times did he miss? He made all those dunks pretty much on the first try. And I think that's what makes it more impressive when you make it on the first try and you're not sitting there for 2 minutes trying it over and over and over. And I think Mac McClung doing that, winning it 3 straight times. Now, I know he's tied for Nate Robinson for the most, but he is the first person to win it 3 straight times. You can make the argument that he may be the greatest player to ever do the dunk contest. And now to see a guy from the G League who may be the greatest player to ever be in the dunk contest, you see why guys like John Morant now might want to come and enter the dunk contest. And I'm real happy for it because I think Matt McClung may have started a trend and may have made the dunk contest cool again.
And I'm trying to look up the comic because it really bothered me. Kevin O'Connor, who covers the NBA for Yahoo, used to write for The Ringer and do podcasting for The Ringer. He must have been like on Stephon Castle's side for whatever reason, thinking he should have won the dunk contest, because he essentially came out and said that Mac McClung is not a real player and said that the props were basically too much and that Stephon Castle did more real dunks than Mac McClung. And I'm like, dude, like, again, this is like what Draymond did on the TNT broadcast. Like, can we stop? Like, I understand, like, Draymond has pull because he's in the NBA. Kevin O'Connor's got a decent following. Like I said, he used to work for The Ringer. Now he works for Yahoo, covering the NBA. What is it with these guys that have these reach? Feel like, oh, well, get off my lawn. We have to do everything the old way. What? We can't become new and improved and try to come up with ways to win. So what? You're mad because a guy who actually wants to take the dunk contest seriously wanted to try hard?
And last time I checked, Nick, the Mac McClung has been having the most exciting dunk contest since we saw Zach LaVine versus Eric Gordon. And those guys had props, and no one complained about it then. And everybody said that was one of the best dunk contests they ever seen. The dunk contest sucks. Mac McClung wins a couple dunk contests and decides to use a few props. And now you got guys like that who are going to say that bull crap. I mean, I can't disagree with that more.
So I found it. So Kevin O'Connor tweeted this out. Stephon Castle should have won. Better dunks without the use of gimmick props, and he's an actual NBA player. All right, dude. So you're the old-fashioned, everything has to be done under NBA proposition. That's basically what he's saying. Stephon Castle missed a bunch of dunks, like you said, and that affects your score when you miss dunks. At least that's what it was in the old format. I think it still affects how many times you do the dunk in. If I'm not mistaken, Mac McClung basically did all his dunks on his first attempts, pretty much, except for maybe one. But he did the car one on his first attempt. Like, those are difficult. And, like, I just want to get into the mind of a guy like Kevin O'Connor, who covers the sport for many years, and just says, oh, well, I don't like the gimmick. The dunk contest is a gimmick. Let's be real here. It's a gimmick. Does anyone really care about the dunk contest unless we do wild and crazy things that are in it? Seriously.
I mean, I would like to see Mac McClung try to become the first player ever to win 4.
Yeah. Now, I originally had the notion where I think it's a little odd that he's not in the NBA and he's competing in the dunk contest, because technically he's on the Magic G League team.
I think he's a two-way player, so he plays NBA minutes like very rarely, but he can, I think, get called up.
I think he's played 3 games, I think they said, technically in the NBA. So I guess technically he is an NBA player because he played in the NBA. But people are getting a little butthurt that like he's on a G League team and is winning the dunk contest. Yeah, because no one else wants to try. No one. And that leads me to my next point of LeBron James, who decided, like an hour or an hour and a half before the game, oh, I'm just going to sit out. My legs and my knees are bothering me, so I'm just not even going to participate in the game. Like, do you have a problem with that he would do it that close to the game?
So I love LeBron, and LeBron's my favorite player, but I definitely would say I don't like the timing of it. He definitely made it so that there couldn't be a replacement for him. And, I think if he probably knew, definitely sooner than when it was announced that he probably wasn't going to play. I don't think it was an issue of like he tried to sit there and play and seeing how he felt that morning. I think he probably knew way ahead of time. So I definitely disagree with LeBron with the timing of it. The bash and the amount of people that are talking crap about him, I think maybe a little over exaggerated about him cheating the game or sitting out. I mean, this is the first time LeBron sat out an All-Star game in 20 years. I mean, the guy, his first year obviously was in the Rising Stars competition, and then it's been in the All-Star every single year since his second year in the league. And now this is his 22nd season in the league. So you're talking about a guy who's played all these NBA minutes, but he's been in All-Star weekend 20 to 21 straight years. And then he decides to finally sit out one, and people are going to bash him for it and say that he's cheating the game. I mean, I disagree with that. I definitely agree that the timing was wrong, but I don't agree with the backlash that he's taken.
I mean, I get it. He's a legend. I don't agree. Like everyone says, oh, he's the all-time greatest player. He has the most points. Number one, the format has changed, and that's why he can score more points in today's NBA compared to like the 80s or the 90s. But that's a debate for another day. The timing was awful. Right before game. First of all, you're taking an incentive away from another player who could have been named an all-star. Because what people don't realize, and this is more of the nerdy numbers and understanding like the caps and money, if a guy makes an all-star team, most contracts have an incentive that if you make the all-star team, you get a bonus for making it. For LeBron, it doesn't mean shit because he makes, $50 million now a year? So for him, incentives and bonuses don't matter. But a guy who maybe like was just missing the roster could have been named an all-star, and that's an extra $500,000 to $750,000 for a guy who maybe is making $1 million, $2 million. That's a lot of money.
And for LeBron, who was already named an all-star, if he doesn't play in it, he's still going to be considered an all-star either way. But you look at a guy like Norman Powell, who has played really, really well, and has been probably the second best player on the Clippers team who hasn't had Kawhi Leonard. You look at him, who could have got his first all-star and could have, even if he doesn't go anywhere with it, he never makes the all-star again, at least for the rest of his life, he could say, hey, I was an NBA all-star. So you kind of rob a guy like that from a moment.
And like, I get it. They want all the big names there, but imagine remember the issue? I think this was last season where a fan in Denver was like really mad. It was a kid because they went to see Steph Curry play for Golden State and he sat out. And Steph Curry, of all guys, actually went and made it right and invited the kid and the family to Golden State. But it's come to that notion now where guys are just load managing everything and they just don't want to play. Of all times to load manage during an NBA All-Star weekend, though, when you're voted to go there. I don't know. And then you just had some other weird things during the game. I don't know if you saw the Mr. Beast challenge that happened at halftime. That was kind of cool seeing the fan.
I'm glad he made the shot.
Glad that he made the shot. That was a cool moment. He won $100,000. I think he had to make one half-court shot before Dame made 3. So that was kind of awesome the way. And it was kind of cool also. It was almost like a buzzer beater moment, even though I don't think it was supposed to be planned that way. But so that was cool. And then in the last game, and if you picked up on this, let me know. So they get, it's 11-1. And then all of a sudden they just take a break in the middle of the last game. And they do all this. And by the way, Kevin Hart was really annoying during the whole broadcast. I thought MC would mean you would hear him from time to time, in the breaks, or they would do some stuff between games. You realize that they left on the TNT mics all game, and you could hear them as they're playing. How annoying that was. And then that last game, they took a break for 20 minutes. That would never happen in a real game. What did you make of that distraction, number one?
Yeah, I didn't like that at all. And I definitely thought Kevin Hart, as funny as he is, I definitely think he was going a little, OD and a little too much to try to be funny. I think that's why, even though he was kind of laughing it off, I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was kind of getting a little pissed off and wanted to get the game going. I don't know if you saw that part where he was cracking jokes to the players. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is on the court and he's ready to play basketball, and you're sitting there holding up because you want to make jokes. I mean, this is not a roast of the NBA. This is the NBA All-Star. So I agree with you in that. And one last thing I want to say too about the All-Star is Tyler Hero. For a guy who, including me, who didn't think he deserved to be there, he really showed out in the three-point contest, and a lot of people wanted to see Dame be like Matt McClung and three-peat and win his third three-point contest. Well, Tyler Hero really, really balled out, and I'm really, really happy for him.
Yeah, he, over the last couple of years, has really gotten into his own game and really become a really good player. Now, Miami is a totally different issue right now because they have a lot of issues going on in Miami, but he's a really good player, and he just looked locked in that final round and really just played well. But overall, I'd probably give the All-Star Weekend like a C- or a D. Like it wasn't great. They got to do something. They got to figure it out. And I think they're going the right direction with having like a bracket system, playing to 40 points with no time, but less interruptions between all the games. So they just got to figure that out. How would you grade the All-Star Weekend?
Yeah, I agree. Maybe I give it a C+. I really did like the three-point contest. I literally liked the dunk contest. The Rising Stars was kind of funny because, the Spurs was trying to find a hack to win. But overall, Rising Stars was very competitive. Stephon Castle really, really showed out. But overall, yeah, I give it a C+. I thought it was good, but it definitely can be better. And I definitely think the All-Star game is definitely headed in the right direction.
All right, we'll see what happens. But now we go from the NBA to the NFL, and we have two unfortunate stories. One starting with Justin Tucker. Now, remind me again how many episodes ago the first allegations came out? Was it like 2 episodes ago?
Yeah, I want to say 2, 3 at most.
So the original allegations, Justin Tucker had 7 massage therapists come out with allegations of all different types of things for the Baltimore Banner. Then we kind of forgot about it for a couple weeks because it kind of him and his lawyer came out and said, "Well, we're going to fight this and whatever." Now there's 7 more massage therapists coming out with allegations, and it's being reported in the same paper, the Baltimore Banner. And so the total that they're saying now is 16 therapists from 8 spas. I didn't realize it was 8 spas either. All making allegations of inappropriate behavior. All of the incidents reportedly occurred during sessions from 2012 to 2016. We're talking about over 10 years ago for some of this stuff. In the latest allegations, one woman told the Banner that Tucker left what she believed to be an ejaculate on the table, and another said he made intense eye contact through the massage while exposed. Well, we started to talk about this, and we said, all right, we kind of got to wait out the NFL and the process that this goes through to see what happens. Does this change anything kind of in your reaction, or do we still kind of need to wait for the NFL? I mean, it changes because there's more allegations out there, right?
Yeah, it's definitely looking worse and worse for Justin Tucker. But in my opinion, it's still kind of the same. I still think it's exactly looking like the Deshaun Watson scenario, where Deshaun Watson had a couple allegations, and as time went on, it only got worse and worse. The only thing is weird, though, is there wasn't as much time between Deshaun Watson's allegations to when they actually came out. It's weird that all this happened, between 2012 and 2016. There was so much time that had passed. I'm not sure if maybe some of these massage parlors were scared to really go out in public. And then, maybe at some point, maybe they all started talking together and they realized like maybe this guy was a recurring problem. And once they realized there was multiple massage parlors that had the same story, maybe they're like, hey, maybe if we all band together, maybe it'll make our story strong enough. Because maybe they felt like, maybe one massage therapist, maybe one massage parlor wouldn't be enough of a story to really take down Justin Tucker. But now if you have 7 more on top of what you already have, and now you got over 8+ different massage parlors themselves, that's definitely a big story and a lot of allegations that, more and more time goes past. It seems like maybe there's some truth to it. and it's definitely not a good look for Justin Tucker.
Right. So during the Super Bowl week, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell addressed the allegations against Tucker, saying, quote, "They are obviously serious issues, and he is taking that seriously as we are. Tucker could be subject to discipline under the NFL's personal conduct policy." Really, Roger? You're just going to say the same thing over and over and over? It sounds like the same thing he said about Deshaun Watson. Same exact thing. And again, we're going to have to ask the same questions. We need to see the evidence. We need to see the allegations. We need to see who's coming forward and speaking. So we really got to figure out what to do in this scenario to see if he's either doing the allegations that are coming out or if he's not and these people are just going after him. We don't know. Tucker wrote that the Banner article, quote, takes innocuous or ambiguous interactions and skews them so out of proportion that they are no longer recognizable. This is a desperate tabloid fodder. So what do you make of that?
I mean, like you said, we really won't know the truth. And, of course, that's what they're going to say. But if these are false, and this is another Matt Arisa situation, that's going to be very unfortunate. Like I said, it's either Justin Tucker is Deshaun Watson, and maybe there is some truth to this, or maybe he's Matt Arisa, and maybe he's innocent. But with all these allegations, like I said, innocent until proven guilty. But with all these allegations out there, it's tough to side with Justin Tucker at this time.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you got to look at the Deshaun Watson situation and just say, all right, we got to let the legal system play out. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Deshaun Watson basically got a plea deal, essentially, for his case. So, again, we don't know if he's guilty or not. In my opinion, when you take a plea deal, that means there is some guilt involved. I'm not saying on the record that he's guilty because we can't prove that. But I think eventually what's going to happen is we're going to find out something. I mean, they're going to have to make some sort of agreement to make it go away. But again, just trying to be careful because these are allegations on the forefront. First, and we don't want to say something that, again, gets us in trouble for certain things that could be not true allegations. But it just goes on to say, last week, Tucker's lawyers provided a sworn declaration from the owner of the Baltimore spa and salon saying she never received complaints about him or suspected he engaged in any misconduct. Therapists from the spa told the Banner they did not report his behavior to supervisors because they feared they would lose their jobs, which is something you had said. That they might be afraid to report the allegations. But the last thing I'll say is there a statute of limitations since these happened 9 to 13 years ago? I don't know. That's more of a legal question of sorts. But I don't know. Final comments on this? Because it's an open... We have to leave it an open story because we don't know right now.
Yeah, and this is why I'm a sports podcaster and not a lawyer, because I don't know how any of this litigation stuff works with the statute of limitations. But that's a very interesting question. And with these women coming out, obviously they must feel pretty confident that they can make some hay and maybe get some justice for what happened.
So we'll check back in on that story when we can, because right now I would just say that this is a bad pun, but the jury is out right now because we just don't know what's going to happen. TBD, correct. Now, from one NFL situation to another. Now, this one is unique because this one just dropped out of the sky. Just literally dropped out of the sky. And I see it on Twitter. It seems like most of our news we get is from Twitter these days and no longer on actual news sources. But Jonathan Martin, if you would know Jonathan Martin because you said he played for the Bills at one point.
Richie Incognito did.
So, Incognito did. You're right. Martin played for Miami, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, if everyone remembers, this was about 10 years ago. Jonathan Martin reported a bullying allegation against Richie Incognito, and I think they were on the same team at one point, right?
Yeah, they were both on Miami together.
Okay. So, these allegations went wild when Martin came out and made the bullying allegations. It took over NFL headlines for weeks because it was such a big thing. This was way back when bullying was a massive problem, not just in sports, but around the country. We were having bullying issues. And it's kind of a weird thing to hear another NFL player bullying another player, because I guess the mantra is like, oh, I'm in the NFL. I'm a big, strong NFL athlete. You wouldn't think bullying would go on in the locker room, so to speak. Before we go into this, what do you remember about that story?
Yeah, I basically remember, obviously, Incognito was a no-nonsense, take no shit from nobody type guy, rough around the edges. But, Buffalo Bills players loved him as a teammate. And, he maybe had some controversial things that he may have said or did off the field. But he was always known as a good teammate and was never known as someone that would be, racist or someone that would be a bully. But when Jonathan Martin came out with these allegations, when you saw it, it was like, well, maybe there's some truth to it because he was a little rough around the edges, and it made everything that he did do outside of that seem like everything was much worse than he did. And for a guy like Jonathan Martin, he pretty much blamed Richie Incognito for why his career didn't work out. He blamed him for why he lost his confidence, why he was scared to be the NFL player that he was. And now it turns out that was all an elaborate scheme for him to put some blame and some justification of why he just wasn't good enough to make it in the NFL long term. Him and his family and his agent decided like, hey, I'm not going to be able to make it. I'm on the verge of being the bust and being out of the NFL. I'm going to blame Richie Incognito for why I didn't make it in the NFL. Now I'll get some endorsements and some sympathy for it, and maybe my career won't be looked at so bad. I'm glad that the truth came out. But it's just unfortunate for Richie Incognito because, like I said, a guy that was known in Buffalo as a great teammate just completely ruined his character and reputation. And it just, like I said, made everything that he did outside the football field seem much worse than what it actually was.
Yeah, I just remember this being dominant for weeks and months and even after the season. I just remember this being a huge story. But for him to come out 10 years later and to basically say it was built on a lie. What do you mean a bullying allegation was built on a lie? That number one, that makes no sense that a bullying allegation was built on a lie, because if I remember correctly, Jonathan Martin had statements and he had lawyers involved and all this different things that he needs to be out of the league and blah, blah, blah. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Incognito was incognito. He was gone. He just was, no one was going to touch him. He was damaged goods because he was a bullier. No one, that's bad. No bullying, no nothing. And I'm just trying to read quickly through the headlines. So the Dolphins suspended Richie Incognito in early November 2013 for the remainder of the season. Now, I don't remember. Do you remember how early on into the season it happened or no?
I'm not sure, but I know he definitely lost out on a good chunk of money from his game check.
Because the headline says he was suspended November 2013 for the remainder of the season. That's the beginning of the season, right?
Well, that's November. Yeah, you're looking at probably at least, mid-season. You're looking at, you probably only played it probably about 8 weeks of the 17-week season.
So he lost about half his contract for that year and whatever other money. And it says he was blackballed from the league in 2014. That I remember because no one wanted to touch him after that. And he missed the entire 2014 season. So essentially it was a season and a half, 2 seasons that he lost. It says the team also fired offensive line coach Jim Turner after the report. A lot of people had their jobs affected because of Jonathan Martin's now supposed lie that he's now claiming that this was not a thing. So Omar Kelly, and I think he writes for ESPN now, it was his column that he spoke to Jonathan Martin. And you know how a lot of columnists will put out a quote to tease their article when they write something? So he writes, my column, Jonathan Martin admits that Bullygate saga was built on a lie. Oh, actually, it's Miami Herald. Sorry, not ESPN. And Richie Incognito quote tweets over the top of it and writes, finally, in all caps. And I'm sure you and I and a bunch of NFL fans were saying, Richie Incognito's a jerk, because we had no idea what was going on in the locker room. But I think that's a natural reaction. If someone's a bad guy, you don't know what's going to happen. But Are you surprised that Jonathan Martin came out 10 years later?
Yeah, I'm surprised. I mean, this would be something that you don't think he'd ever, go back on. This is such a big lie that he basically built his career on almost. I mean, it's the only reason why anybody even knows who Jonathan Martin is. And now for him to retract on this, it just makes him seem like such a complete scumbag. And I hate to sound harsh, but it really does. For him to ruin someone's character like this. And now my question is, what does Richie Incognito do? Does he decide to take legal action and decide to maybe sue Jonathan Martin for those game checks that he did lose and potentially also losing out on a year of his career? Because, I mean, he could be looking at a $3 to $5 million lawsuit.
I think more than that, depending on what his contracts were and all that stuff. He could potentially have a lawsuit against the NFL, too, for not handling this properly, which that could be a whole different issue. And if I'm assuming the NFL would want to settle on that quick if a lawsuit happens, because they don't want this black cloud over their league if that's what's going to happen. Another quote that came out, it says former Dolphins offensive lineman Jonathan Martin says that he, quote, never believed for a second that he was being bullied by Richie Incognito. What? What are you talking about? What do you mean? You would never believe for a second you were bullied? You came out and were basically crying all over the news. That's why this is not adding up. And on top of it, Richie Incognito was in a quote tweeting mode. And I get it because he's mad. I don't know if that's the exact 100% right way of handling it. But he said and this is where it gets a little nasty, but he says he couldn't cut in the NFL, so he quit, and his mom blamed me. Legacy media pushed this narrative long and far. Too bad it was all a lie. They lied to protect his money. He quit. The team had every right to claw back that money. His mom started the bullying narrative with ESPN. Now, that's true, if I remember correctly, because ESPN was one of the first to run with the headlines. So I know what he means by that. The whole legacy media nonsense I could give two craps about, because that's a whole different political argument, which I don't want to deal with. But if you remember, his mom came out big time and was on the defensive. But again, we didn't know what was going on.
And she probably didn't know the truth either. I mean, he probably lied to her about it, and she probably believed him too.
So Jonathan Martin probably had enough built-up credibility to the point where everybody was believing, oh, this guy's bullying me. We need to go after him. How do you think his mom feels right now seeing this?
Yeah, like I said, I'm not sure if it was an inside job of him, his agent, and she knew, or if Jonathan Martin kept him to himself. I mean, maybe it's more believable that Jonathan Martin kept it to himself so that his mom would be more believable and be able to defend him more. Yeah, it's a weird situation either way, and I'm glad that Richie Incognito got his name cleared. But like I said, I hope he gets some of that money back that he lost.
Right. And by the way, you pointed this out to me before we started doing the show. Incognito is not a saint by any means. Let's be accurate on the same terms and say Richie Incognito is not a church choir boy out there. But you can't blame somebody if they didn't do the allegations that were out there. You just can't. That's slander, actually, going back to legal terms again. But if you slander somebody, you destroy their reputation, you destroy their career, which is what happened. So I don't blame Richie for going out and answering to people who are saying this because, again, I guess this vindicates him in a way because now he gets to hear the truth. But it took 10 years too long for the truth to come out. And it took the NFL. I haven't seen an NFL statement yet, which is not shocking because the NFL doesn't usually react on time when things happen. But do you think the NFL needs to do some damage control on this a little bit?
Oh, yeah, I definitely think they need to give some money to Richie Incognito, whether it's if it's under the table or if it's some little settlement. But they definitely got to take care of Richie Incognito.
Yeah, this one, I think you and I are on the same page, 100% on that. You know how they say sometimes, and by the way, if kids are listening to this, just please understand I'm not saying this for the morality reasons, because I totally believe that you should tell the truth whenever something happens. But don't you think Jonathan Martin should have said to himself, like, all right, it's been 10 years. Why would I come out and all of a sudden say that this is all a sham? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, why would he do it now? And again, let me preface. If you did something wrong, you should always admit if you do something wrong. But if you could get in the mind of Jonathan Martin for a second and say, 10 years since incident, I should admit it. Would you do that?
I mean, maybe it was just 10 years of it just eating at him. And maybe as time got passed, maybe each year would just getting harder and harder. And maybe it just reached a boiling point to where maybe he couldn't live with himself anymore with that lie. And maybe he just thought, that this was the only way he could find peace.
I guess, but I don't know. This is one where nobody wins, really, in my book. Like, both sides lose, but at least Incognito can now finally live with a little more peace, knowing that he wasn't a bullier, so to speak. All right, let's move on. Let's talk some actual NFL, some off-season stuff. This has been rumored for a while. Now, his wife, I think, who has a podcast now, came out and just totally destroyed the media and came out and also because, like, they think that he's going to be traded. Do you think he's going to be traded? I just don't see him being traded.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be traded. There's just been a lot of trade rumors and a lot of people mocking the Rams to trade Stafford. And I think it's because of contract negotiations, because they know that if they can't, change the contract around and get Matthew Stafford on a brand new deal, that they probably would have to trade Matthew Stafford to go in a different direction. But do we have to ultimately believe that they're not going to be able to figure it out? I mean, I do. I think Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford, and that GM will be able to figure things out. I mean, Matthew Stafford's not going to want to play for any other team. And I mean, I think at this point, I can't see Stafford playing for a different organization. I think he's going to retire as a Ram.
I mean, you won a Super Bowl there.
He signs one of those one-day contracts with the Detroit Lions. But in terms of playing, I don't think he's going to play for another team other than the Rams. So I think it's just rumors. But like I said, they definitely got to figure out a new contract. And I know Stafford is getting up there in the age. And maybe the Rams are going to have to start to figure out a successor at some point. But I don't think that's right now.
Now, if the Rams really want to deal with more damage control, it's that basically who's the receiver that came out? We talked about it a couple of weeks ago on Kupp, where Cooper Kupp came out and said that the team is trading me. I'd be more worried about that than I'd be worried about Stafford, because I think Stafford wants to stay in Los Angeles. He won a Super Bowl there, for crying out loud. I mean, so I don't think he's going anywhere. There's a lot of damage control right now that has to be done with the Rams. And that's what now I wonder why Sean McVay wants to possibly go to broadcasting or get out of there and do something, because he's under damage control central, it seems like, every year in LA. So I don't know. That one's just more NFL offseason. They'll figure it out. I think they're one of those teams that goes 500 or a little more. They'll make the playoffs, they'll make a run, and then they'll get eliminated.
And they got a young defense, so, I mean, they are an improving team.
True. They have good pieces. They just got to get everything together and mesh. Speaking of that, also, you have Football Forecast, the off-season show, starting this week. So I'm sure this will be one of the things you'll be kind of dissecting along with free agency coming up soon. So Football Forecast in podcast form starts Saturday. Again, same time, noon Eastern. You and Kanan getting ready to drive the bus on that. All right, let's move on to something you and I were discussing. This almost led to a huge disaster for YouTube TV subscribers like you and I, actually, too. So there was news that came out last week that YouTube TV and Paramount were going to split and go their separate ways. But here's the problem. Paramount owns CBS. And what's on CBS for most sports fans every year? March Madness. Now, initial reaction when you saw this was possibly going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even know that they were having, bad negotiations. And then when they saw that they were going to lose Paramount, I thought they were just referring to, Paramount Plus or something like that. And then I saw, oh, they're going to lose CBS and CBS Sports Network. Then I got real nervous and I started following the story, and it seemed like it got worse and worse. And YouTube TV kept tweeting out like, "Hey, we're still continuing negotiations. We're going to do our best to get it together. We're going to try our best to get a deal done before the deadline." And then that deadline passed, and they're like, "Yeah, these channels are going to be lost after midnight of February 13th." And I'm like, "Damn, now I don't know what I'm going to do." I was starting to look at prices for Hulu TV Live, and possibly thinking about changing. And then the next day, I seen that CBS and CBS Sports were still on there, and then YouTube TV tweeted out like, "Hey, we got an extension." Everybody's commenting back and saying, "Well, how long is the extension? Are we going to be able to have March Madness or the Masters?" Well, then we got the great news over the weekend that they finally got a deal done, and we don't have to worry about that mess. And as a YouTube TV subscriber, it was a roller coaster, but it's definitely a sigh of relief.
This is a typical negotiation between, this is just the new age version of a negotiation. It used to be cable networks would go into dispute with leagues, and then they would get to a deadline. Oh, we're threatening to shut it off, so it's not going to be on TV. We've seen this before. And then I was like, oh wow, this actually looks a little serious. Like, because it got to that Thursday deadline where they were going to shut everything off, and it wasn't just Paramount. It was like, because Nickelodeon for kids, or CBS Sports and CBS Sports Network for the sports, and it's a bunch of things. Paramount owns a lot. People don't realize that. Like on the YouTube TV package alone, I think they have like 10 or 11 channels or something on YouTube TV. And for most people who didn't see this either, YouTube TV's price went up from $73 to $83. So they were trying to push the price onto the networks rather than absorbing the price. And I think that's kind of what caused an issue with Paramount. But can you imagine if CBS was not available for March Madness? Like,
oh, it would have been a huge fumble for YouTube TV, and they definitely would have looked like fools, losing a huge subscriber like that after just raising your prices. I mean, it's one thing to raise your prices. You can't raise your prices and then lose something like that. And I think YouTube TV knew that they couldn't do both, and they knew that with all the comments, there was a lot of people on the verge of changing who they were going to get their live television from, and YouTube TV stepped up and got a deal done.
now, let me make an important distinction just so people understand the difference. If you went and purchased the Paramount app, you would have been able to watch, even with that dispute, on YouTube TV. So if you had the Paramount app, you could have watched all the March Madness coverage despite the negotiations going on. So it was just on YouTube TV platform itself where the issues would have been if that had persisted and led to a blackout. So it was a matter of how bad did you want to keep YouTube TV if the negotiations had gone on or gotten closer to March Madness or Selection Sunday. So that's more of that issue. And we've, like I said, we've seen hundreds and thousands of negotiations like this before. Like we just saw the NBA negotiations just happen with TNT basically threatening a lawsuit, saying that they got kicked out when they shouldn't have been, which, by the way, I think TNT and their head of sports content is a jerk. But I think part of that has to do with they brought Amazon, which, again, digital. You have, for WWE and UFC, you have Netflix. I mean, that's the new age. And Anthony, I don't know if you saw the story also that Netflix wants to eventually buy a Sunday NFL package away from CBS or Fox.
They're looking to get the 4 o'clock slate, and I subscribe to NFL Sunday Ticket. So what's weird about that is, I think as an NFL Sunday Ticket holder, I guess I would still get all the games. But if you're not a Sunday Ticket holder and you just got regular CBS or Fox or have an antenna, you're not going to be able to get those 4 o'clock games. And I think the NFL would be making a mistake. If you want to give them the Christmas games or Thursday Night Football, that's fine. But leave Sundays to the fans. Leave Sunday 1 o'clock and 4 o'clocks alone. I mean, that's been a tradition for a long time, and don't mess that up.
I mean, unfortunately, though, we've seen what the NFL has done. They really don't care about the fan over the last couple of years. Yes, exactly. That's all they care about. I mean, because if they really cared, they wouldn't make all these exclusive windows that you see in the NFL or any sport where you have these issues. This is all they care about. That's all they care about. It's all money. Like that's it. Like, because did the NFL really need an exclusive Christmas game on Netflix? No, they did not. They could have put that on any network that they chose and just said, all right, everyone watch on TV. I happen to have Netflix, so I could watch the game. But I have Amazon, so I've never turned it on really to watch Thursday Night Football, but I have Amazon if I so wanted to. But it's annoying to have all these extra platforms for everything. So this would have been a whole nother disaster if this whole thing happened. But all right, let's move on because we have some other quick stories to get to. This I actually watched. I watched a good portion of this. So USA versus Canada and rematch in the Four Nations title game. This is the NHL. Well, I shouldn't even call it NHL. It's a hockey event for different countries. And all of a sudden, I see 3 fights break out in 9 seconds of game time. So
yeah, when it comes to hockey, USA and Canada has a huge rivalry. And the thing is, USA has had an influx of talent who's come into the NHL. So now there's a lot of great players from the United States in the NHL. But the reason why we haven't seen this matchup in so long, is because there was a long period of time where the NHL wasn't allowed to send their players over to the Olympics. Now, that was a huge thing, NHL players playing for their countries. That was one of the biggest things every 4 years. Well, around 10 years ago, that stopped. And guys like Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby haven't been able to play in these games for 10 plus years. They finally got an agreement. Now they're going to be playing in the actual Olympics next year. Now, they didn't want to have these guys being rusty after having such a delay. So the NHL decided, instead of the All-Star Week, we'll have these Four Nations tournament. And you could see, from the jump, you had Matthew Tkachuk dropping the gloves immediately, get into a fight. Then his brother Brady Tkachuk is getting into a fight as soon as after that mess is over. Then they play for about 8 seconds. Next thing you know, USA's hitting the goalie a little too hard, and now his forward's fighting the defenseman. So now you got 3 players for each team, 6 players in total in the penalty box in the first 9 seconds. So, I mean, it was absolutely pandemonium, and you can see the emotions and how much this game mattered to both Canada and the USA. Now, USA was able to come out with the win. They were able to shut down Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby and Nathan McKinnon. But now when they go into this rematch, Canada is going to be really pumped up to get revenge. They never really lose. USA now, without their top defenseman, Charlie McAvoy, who's not going to be playing in the game, that's a huge loss. And what's crazy is Sidney Crosby, who's one of the top 3 players of all time, the greatest player to ever wear the Canadian uniform, that was his first loss ever for Team Canada. He was 26-0. Now he's got a loss, and now he's going to be pissed off. I think it'll be close, but unfortunately, I'll be rooting for USA. But like I said, unfortunately, I think Canada is going to win in the rematch.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, and I looked this up, 32 penalty minutes within that first 9 seconds. Is that correct?
Yeah, because when you get into a fight, they're usually about 5-minute major penalties for each player.
So that means there were,
and that would make sense because there was about 6 players in the penalty box total.
So that's 30 minutes. So that means there had to be another 2 minutes somewhere else.
2-minute minor after that.
But that's crazy. 32 penalty minutes in the first 9 seconds. And I'm talking about first 9 seconds of play clock. Like, I think it took, 15, 20 minutes to play, the first 15 to 20 seconds of game? And I get it. I need to get more into hockey because I feel like it's a little faster. But maybe that's part of the reason why I can't get into hockey because it's like a game of Pong. Like, you're just hitting the ball back and forth and you don't know where it's going to end up. But no, it was entertaining. I heard Jack Eichel talking to Sports Center after the game, and they were asking him, did you know that was coming? And he just looked at the camera and he's like, I knew that was coming. And I'm like, all right, I dig it. I dig that they were willing to get the hands dirty.
That's so great is it's so gritty and so tough, and those players play so hard. And you'll never watch an NHL game where a player is taking a play off or not playing hard.
And what did I see also? The hits in the game were unbelievable. The amount of hits into the boards, these were aggressive, right?
Now just wait until you see how hard these guys play in the playoffs, and it goes to show you the difference in mentality between the NBA All-Stars compared to the NHL guys. I mean, for a tournament that's really just for bragging rights and really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, and it's kind of just a pre-tournament and a precursor to next year. I mean, these guys are playing their lives off for this game, and like I said, it shows you the difference in mentality between NHL players and NBA players.
Well, that's an interesting fact you bring up, because a lot of people were saying, what if you turned the NBA All-Star game into USA versus the world? And now that would be more fascinating in the standpoint, hey, defending your country against defending the world. I mean, that would be an interesting argument debate. The problem is, I think there's more international All-Stars in the NBA than there are American
It would
All-Stars.
make the selection process much tougher.
I mean, you might get more creative and see more players, which would probably be a good thing because some guys deserve the stage. But that's why I think this Four Nations thing is kind of unique, because when you play for your country and you're wearing that USA flag, or you're wearing the Canadian leaf, or whatever other country being respected, you're playing for your country. That's totally different. So I'm curious to see how that is going to play out. All right, quickly, let's go to the UFC since we have that. So I got to ask you, I asked Pat and Zan from Outsiders, UFC Seattle got bombed, like big time. Like there were cancellations everywhere. So quickly, you want to talk about that? Because there was a lot of cancellations.
Yeah, there was a lot of cancellations, a lot of fights that were moved, a lot of fighters that were hurt that can't participate. Also, there was a lot of fights that fighters that maybe could have fought, but they didn't want to push it, so they moved it a couple weeks to UFC 313. Overall, I still think it's a good card, and there's still some good fights. But referring to last week, we had two guys who had two opportunities to become ranked fighters. We had Yusuf Zalal going up against Kevin Kattar, a top 10 contender. He was able to come out on top and establish himself as a ranked fighter, getting this unanimous decision win. But then we had RoboCop Gregory Rodriguez going up against Jared Cannonier. Now, a lot of people thought this was going to be Rodriguez's time to shine. Well, it was a battle and a war throughout. But Cannonier was able to show that veteran toughness and was able to get the TKO win and show why he is a ranked fighter and maybe why Rodriguez is still a fight or two away from being a ranked fighter. Now, when we look at UFC Seattle, we do got the great, past two-time weight class champion Henry Cejudo going up against Song Yadong. Now, Henry Cejudo is past his prime, and he hasn't really looked good in his last few fights. Now, I know Song Yadong hasn't looked well either, but he's a much younger fighter, and I think he's got potential to bounce back and start to go into his potential and go into his prime with this fight. So I think Song Yadong will probably get the win, and I think Henry Cejudo should probably think about hanging it up. In the co-main event, we got Anthony Hernandez against Braden Allen. Now, Braden Allen, I didn't like his performance in his last couple matchups. Well, Anthony Hernandez, I mean, he's been on a tremendous win streak, and he's been finishing a lot of his last fighters. So I think he's going to continue that streak and look for Anthony Hernandez to get another finish win.
It seems like the UFC's had some bad luck over since the beginning of the year with cancellations and fights. Do you think it's just bad luck, or do you think like there's something to all these cancellations and move arounds and stuff?
No, it's definitely bad luck. And Dana White talks about this all the time. You'll have periods in time where you'll have 3 or 4 months where nothing happens, where every fight goes to plan. All the main events go, no one pulls out. But then you'll have 2 or 3 months of chaos where you can't catch a break and all your main events have to be changed. And Dana White just said that's the business and you just got to make it work. And so far, he usually makes it work.
Actually, I want to get your reaction to something I just saw on Twitter. Alexa Grasso is going to be taking on Natalia Silva at UFC 315 in Montreal. What do you make of that?
Oh, that's going to be a great fight. I mean, Grasso is one of the all-time great fighters. So, I'm glad in UFC 315 looks like it's going to be a good card. And I think that's going to be in Montreal. You said correct?
Yeah.
That's going to be a great card for the Canadian fans.
I haven't heard her name in forever, though. It feels like I remember like she was the big one. She talked a lot of trash. Like now all of a sudden she's back. I happen to like her. I think she's a feisty fighter.
Oh yeah.
But no, that'll be interesting to see. But that'll basically do it for this episode. We kind of ran out of time, but we'll get to baseball next week because pitchers and catchers are reporting actually after this episode, so to speak, the February 20th. So we'll get into some baseball. Trust me, there's some headlines we will get to. We'll try to get to college basketball because that's getting into the prime as we get closer to March Madness and Selection Sunday. The plan is for the network to have a live stream Sunday selection show right after the stream is over. So we're going to try and effort that for everybody because we had a lot of people watch that last year. So we're going to try and effort that again. But that'll do it for this episode. Make sure you follow us on social media. Empty the Bench at ETB Sports, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at ETB Sports. Follow the Empty the Bench podcast network at ETB Network, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Follow our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ETB Network. Please like and subscribe. It helps as we get closer to 1,000 subscribers. So please help as well. And listen wherever you get your podcast. That's all audio platforms. I actually checked. We are on mostly every audio platform out there. So don't be afraid if you can't watch on the video side. I know it's hard. Some people take us on a jog. I've heard some people do that before. So please continue to do that as well. ETB Substack, etbnetwork.substack.com. Check us out. We're actually going to go right after our episode to go record Alley-Oop Analytics. We have a fun topic. I won't spoil it. So please check that out. We're on every Thursday, so please check that out as well as all the other bonus content we put out there as well. And we are presented by Playback. Check out our streams, playback.tv/ETB Network. We just came off the NBA All-Star Weekend. We have some WWE. So you're going to get NXT. You're going to get SmackDown. We're going to get some AEW streams. And we have some other stuff in the work as well. So just check that all out. Playback.tv/ETB Network. Whew. All right. And by the way, I forgot to point this out at the beginning of the episode. If you're watching on the video side, we have a new graphic in the background. Also, I said it was a little time for a fresh graphic. And you'll see also that I got our graphics person to actually put us in the background for our new graphics. So now we can be a part of our own show, at least. So, all right. That'll do it. He's Anthony Balester. I'm Nick Morgasen. We will be back for episode 268 next week. Have a good afternoon, everybody. We will see you next week.